Welcome to Franchise Vibes. And I'm excited for this topic. It's actually near and dear to my heart. So today it's going to be a vibe check. Vibe check, balancing business and bliss. I'm excited to have with us Shulamit Ber Levtov, and she is the entrepreneur's therapist. And I just found that incredibly interesting. So let's get right into it. So tell us about your journey. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to focus on supporting women business owners in particular.
Thanks for asking. So when I went back to school to get my master's degree as a therapist later in life, and coming into the job market in my 50s, it doesn't look good for anybody, but especially not women starting at the bottom. And so I knew that I wanted to be self-employed, have my own business, and that business had to support me in my so-called retirement. Because the gig economy started in the 80s, newsflash, there weren't, we all worked on contract then. So no pensions, no things like that. And that's why I started a business and jumped into business training and learning how to run my private practice like a business. And I experienced for myself the emotional ups and downs of that. And I hung out with other business owners and I heard from them their own emotional ups and downs. And as I advanced in my career, I was like, being an entrepreneur has its own unique challenges. And I have not met any other therapists who understand entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And it seemed like there was a need for it. And that's how the entrepreneur's therapist was born.
That's incredibly interesting because, again, I know we're always told that there's going to be different coaches and different counseling and different types of therapy for different things. Like, they say, okay, you might want to have a life coach, or you might want to have a business coach and things of that nature. But I've never thought of it specifically for entrepreneurship. And I do think that that is something that is not only needed, but it's unique, but it's like necessarily unique, if that makes sense.
Well, it's not exceptional. It's not exceptional to have a mental health challenge or to have an emotional challenge as a human being. And it's even less exceptional as a business owner because the nature of the work that we're doing is really hard. It's very demanding. And so you add that to just everyday stress of being a human being on this planet. And, it's not exceptional that people run into problems and that they would want support for that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. How does mental and emotional well-being of women entrepreneurs impact their business? So let's talk about the impact of the business.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you can imagine the last time something really went sideways in your business and how upsetting and stressful that was, it makes it hard to concentrate. It makes it hard to take in new information. It
Mhm.
makes it hard to focus. It makes it hard to make decisions. If you're not sleeping well, the fatigue also is having an impact, right? And so if you're running a business and you can't take in new information and you can't make decisions and you can't focus, and you're kind of like biting people's heads off or snapping or crying at the drop of a hat, these are all ways in which your functioning as a business owner is impaired when your emotions are or the impact of stress is not addressed. It impairs your capacity as the person running the business. You're not your best self.
You're right, absolutely. Well, what made you specifically like, I guess I want to think about understanding the challenges a little bit more specifically for women.
Mm,
So,
mm.
what specific challenges do women entrepreneurs often face regarding their mental and emotional well-being in the business world?
Sure. Well, it's isolation in particular because there are many fewer women business owners than there are men business owners. But also, women face significant barriers. For example, if you have a brick and mortar business and you go to the bank to get a loan to expand, for example, women are turned down for loans at a much greater rate than men are. Women get grants and are admitted to programs that are open to any gender. Women are men have the position of privilege, right? They're more visible, they're considered to be more competent, they're considered to be more appropriate for business, and so they are privileged in the process and women are disadvantaged. And it's a similar thing for folks of color or as somebody who has any other, for example, if English is not your first language, if you have a disability, all those things are considered strikes against you and not entrepreneurial, right?
Yes.
And so there are many systemic barriers built in that impact us that are not necessarily visible, but that we live in the day-to-day as business owners. And again, the more oppressions that come to play in your life, the more barriers you face as an entrepreneur. So women are not, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, women are doing pretty well as a whole compared to women of color or women with disabilities or women with kids, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you said that. I mean, me personally, it's timely just even having this conversation with you, just based off of, everything that I had to go through, just last week. And it's just, again, it's pretty ironic that I'm having this conversation with you now. And you actually touch on some things that I was going to ask for my next question, which was on the common struggles. And I think you might have touched on it, but as far as common struggles for women and for women business owners, how do these manifest in their personal and professional lives? Is there anything else that you can give on that?
Well, we've talked about the professional aspect. There's a lot to do with the systems and structures that help people grow their businesses. Just women have many barriers because they are perceived by the people who are giving, who are in power, who have the supports to give. They give less to women because they're perceived as less competent and all that stuff. But then women also have another complicated aspect, which we would call personal, but I don't think is limited to the personal sphere. And that is our perceived role as a caretaker or caregiver. So when you have kids, right, there's the social conditioning that tells us we're supposed to be the best mom ever. But if you are parenting and also have a business, then you've got this, what I have heard my clients call mom guilt, where I'm not really doing right by my kids and I'm not really doing right by my business. I feel torn in two directions. It's not even necessarily true, but that's the fear that you have or the worry that you have. And then if you have a spouse, right, your partner, your beloved, then you're like, well, I have to split myself between my business, my kids, and my beloved. And then if you have parents who need your care or support or other family members, then you're split 4 ways. And while it's true that men do exercise those roles to some degree, socially speaking, there is the expectation that it's women who do. And so this is where the mental health aspect comes. You may not believe that about your own self in your own life, but at the same time, you have playing on your mind the guilt that comes from, well, what does it even mean to be a woman? And am I letting down my womanhood by not being a good mom or being a good spouse? And that kind of inner stress or inner conflict then decreases our capacity so that we come to our business with only because we're so stressed out about these other things, we only have half ourselves to bring the business to the business.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely resonates. So I would say I want to move on to effective coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
What coping mechanisms or strategies have you found to be particularly effective for women in business?
So what I teach is that because mental health challenges are inherent in entrepreneurship, it's not a question of if, but when and to what degree. And the way that we deal with challenges in business is we make a plan. We have a business plan with a financial plan, a marketing plan, a cash flow forecast. So we should also have a mental health plan that's an inherent part of our business plan, so that then we don't have to make time for a spa date or save money to go on vacation. We can integrate care for ourselves and others as an integral part of our processes in our day-to-day in the business. And so how we do this is by identifying the key performance indicators for our mental and emotional well-being, the things that really matter if we do them or don't do them, so that we become familiar with what matters to us what helps us function well. And we track those on a regular basis. So I would recommend checking in on those on a weekly basis, looking at what worked and what didn't work and what I need to do differently as a result. And then you make your plan for the coming week. So just like in the 12-week year style planning, where you do a vision for the, you have the 5-year vision, the 2-year vision, the 1 year, and then you do every 3 months. So I invite people to have to dream about what they want for their emotional well-being, and then to notice what it is that serves that. For example, here's a really good example. I had a client many years ago who was a wreck, came in and they were just a wreck. Well, I have many clients who come in who are a wreck. And the question was, why am I a wreck? What is the matter with me? And what had happened ultimately is this person had an injury, and they used to be a runner. But with the injury, all of a sudden they couldn't run, and they didn't put 2 and 2 together that their running was their number one mental health strategy. And they went, oh, well, it's because I can't run. And I realized running is so important to me, but they didn't know that this was one of their key performance indicators for their mental and emotional well-being. Once they put 2 and 2 together, they were like, oh, cool. I got to make sure that I run 3 times a week, or my mental and emotional well-being is going to tank. For some people, it's a certain amount of sleep. For other people, there's always the basics, making sure that you drink enough, eat enough, sleep enough, have enough rest. Do you know Tricia Hersey's book, Rest is Resistance?
No, that sounds very interesting.
Yes, it's a very good book. Her Instagram account is the Nap Ministry.
Okay.
And she considers naps as a radical act of resistance against capitalism. And I'm not anti-capitalism, but I'm anti-exploitation. And so, rest is one of the things and that's not sleep, it's rest. So you need to become familiar with just exactly what does rest mean to me and how much I need. So this understanding your key performance indicators is an inquiry, it's a process. And then you come up with those and you check in on them on a regular basis. And so they support you. They become part of what you do in your business in the course of your day, rather than some big production that takes all this time and money. And as you know, when you're running a business, those kinds of things, big things like that, can often go to the side because there's the fire you got to put out today or the business is going to close.
Right. That's so interesting because, well, one is well, the first thing you say KPIs, in my mind, I'm thinking, as a person who has been in sales for a very long time, I have a very strong sales background, KPIs that was the important thing, right? Key performance indicators. I would have never tied it to something like that. And I think it's so important because it's going to be different for each of us, as you said in the example, with the person who used to be a runner. So that is extremely interesting to me. So I'm thinking now about the preventative approaches. Do you recommend any preventative approaches or practices to help women entrepreneurs maintain good mental health in the challenging world of business?
Right. Well, I would say having a plan and using your plan, checking in with your plan regularly, that's the prevention.
Okay.
There are some things that can help. And so I want to talk about the 3 principles of stress resilience: soothe, discharge, and nourish. So the reason I teach principles is because, again, everybody's different. So just as an example, for some people, having a hot bath is really relaxing. For other people, having a hot bath just drives them up the roof, right? Drives them up the wall, or puts them through the roof. Like, heat is just not your jam, So to have the principles and to understand them helps you identify what specific practices work for you. So soothing is anything that makes you go, right? So for me, it's a massage and a hot bath or something like that. But for other people, it might be music. It might be, they might enjoy cold, for example, might be something that works for them. So anything that makes you kind of like feel that kind of like downshifting in your nervous system, where feel your muscles release a little bit, your breath will deepen a little bit, the crease and the forehead kind of relaxes a little bit. Anything that soothes and calms. And we all have things we like that do that for us. And so identifying the soothing practices and doing those as part of your key performance indicators is a good thing. So and I'll talk about discharge and nourish in a second, but what are examples of soothing practices that you use?
Well, honestly, I agree with we align in the massaging part. And it's funny because the bath part, I think I understand that because I think it does drive me crazy. Like you would think that that would be completely soothing, but if I have to just sit there
Right?
and especially sit there past a certain time, and I didn't
Yeah.
really even think about this, but if I have to sit there past a certain time and it's like it's something I'm purposely doing, like, oh, it has to be at least 20 minutes, like that actually would kind of drive me crazy because like I feel like I have to move. I don't want to just sit here.
Right? Exactly.
But a massage like that, I love a great massage. I treat myself, and I want to do it more, but I treat myself to a complete full body massage along with facial and feet,
Mm.
because the feet is, I don't know, the massaging
Yep.
the
The
feet is
feet are
the
a big
best.
deal. Yeah.
It's a big deal for me. So I do like the full thing, and I always do it on my birthday.
That's so
And I always,
wonderful.
yeah, I do it always on my birthday.
Yeah.
So I find it incredibly soothing and relaxing because after
Yeah.
that, the place that I go to, it's just you just have that moment to just
Mm.
kind of relax and stay there all
Mm.
day if you
Mm.
want.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I do try to, take a couple hours just to do that.
Yeah.
So that's what that kind of reminded me of.
Yeah. So I love that you're one of the people who doesn't like a bath because some people just don't like it. A cup of
Mm.
tea can be another thing that people find really soothing. There are so many, but this is the trick, is to pay attention in your own life to what evokes that feeling of like, ah.
Do you
So
help in that part? I'm sorry to cut you up, but I'm
yeah,
wondering, do you
sure.
help people like actually find
Yes,
what that
yes,
is?
yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so like having a girlfriend to confide in, somebody you can call up and cry on her shoulder or whatever, having company can be a soothing thing. But for some folks, they don't like company. They want to be alone, right? And that's what's soothing, is just having that time away where there's no stimulation. So part of the work that I do is helping people identify what are their KPIs.
Mm.
So discharging has to do with tension and emotions. When stress is high, your body gets tense because it's ready to run or fight. And of course, as humans, we never get the chance to run, and especially in a business, you don't run, and you don't want to be like, you know, clocking your customers or your employees, but we need to do something with that physical energy. And so it can be dancing, it can be running, it can be anything that lets that charge out. It can be sports, it can be yelling, it can be singing, anything that really lets that go on the physical level, and also that lets the emotions go. And that can be a good laugh, a good cry, like to connect with a friend, again, could be a thing that discharges for you.
Mm.
And then nourishing is anything that uplifts or inspires or motivates you. And this is a really, really wide category. It can include religion, it can include worship, it can include spending time in nature, it can include reading something inspirational. It can anything that it can include play. Anything that when you're done, you're like, oh, I feel like I have some capacity now. I feel uplifted. I feel inspired, right? I feel fulfilled. I feel nourished.
Mm.
And so when you can identify what soothes you, what discharges you, and what nourishes you, and you can do those things on a regular basis. So I've given lots of examples of strategies that people use, but again, it's so unique to each person. That's why I don't say, well, you should meditate, because
Mm-hmm.
for some folks, especially trauma survivors, meditation is bad news. There are other ways to work with that. Same as the deep breathing. One of the things people will say is, oh, deep breathing is good for when you're feeling anxious. But if you're a trauma survivor, deep breathing can sometimes activate your trauma response. And so you need another strategy.
Hmm. That is so interesting. So let's get into the balancing part, because this is about dividing
Yeah.
back on balancing and bliss, right? In business. So um as far as balancing work and personal life can be challenging for entrepreneurs. how do you advise women entrepreneurs for finding this balance?
Sure. I think balance is elusive. It really is. We struggle because there are seasons in our lives and seasons in our businesses. And even women, if we're menstruating, there are seasons in a month where our capacity varies, And so I like more to imagine like a flow, right? If you think of the balance that where things, the scales,
Hmm.
that we look at them like this and it's static, it's stuck, but
Hmm.
we are alive and our businesses are alive and so are our lives. And so to have that nice flow, the gentle flow, so there are going to be times when you're more in your business and there are going to be times when you're less in your business, and that's okay. The trick is to pay attention to the flow so that you don't stay too long on one side or the other side, right? Because too much personal, your business is going to suffer. Too much business, your personal is going to suffer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, what really works, in my opinion, is accountability, paying attention and accountability. And this is where I talked about this earlier, having a bestie, especially a best friend who's also a business owner. And you can check in with one another on a regular basis about where is my flow?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I spending my time and energy? And what is needed this week to balance that flow a bit? Because there again, I hate to be difficult but the truth is, in my opinion and in my experience, there is no specific answer. It's about attending to
Mm-hmm.
and caring for ourselves and our businesses and our lives and our families. And if we're not paying attention and we don't have accountability, we can't do any of the other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like you should say that because I used to say that my business bestie. So I guess
Yes,
it's actually an important thing.
it
So
is.
that's
It's a very important thing. Yes.
wow, wow.
Yeah.
So I want to just touch on because this actually, I'm feeling like all this stuff kind of recently happened just to me personally, where there is a stigma. There's a stigma around mental health. And how do you encourage women entrepreneurs to overcome this and seek help when needed?
Yeah. So there are two things. This is so important. I'm glad you asked this question. There are two aspects to this. One, I mentioned earlier, mental health challenges are inherent in entrepreneurship. They are not separate. It's not a question of when, but if, or not a question of if, but when and to what degree, right? And this is actually the case with humans. Mental and emotional challenges are an inherent part of being a human being. And we live in a culture, North America particularly, where there's such an emphasis on our value only in what we can produce. And so I think part of the stigma comes from uh, how we derive our sense of worth from our productivity. And so when we are struggling, we tell ourselves that we're less worthy as humans as a result. So part of it is stepping out of this. What I've been taught is white supremacist culture that puts an emphasis on productivity and extraction above humanity, and to kind of challenge that thinking and to say, like, I am an okay human being even when I struggle, that my
Mm,
value is inherent. My value lies in my humanity, not in my productivity, not in what I can extract from myself and make money out of. So that's one part, is like challenging the thinking, the kind of like social conditioning that we have around that, to accept that there's no shame in having a challenge because it's integral to our experience as a human. The other thing is we're stronger with support.
mm,
So I don't know if you've ever seen like a new housing development where they put the little new trees in, and they're skinny, spindly little trees, and they
mhm.
wrap the, I'm going to say the stem, the trunk, the little skinny trunk of the tree, and then they put they put a rubber thing around the trunk of the tree, and they put the wires down to support it.
Yeah.
And they're so spindly, those little trees, and they look so vulnerable. And the truth is, though, they would be vulnerable if they didn't have those things. The fact that they are protected means that the rabbits and the deer can't come and chew the bark off. The wires mean that they can withstand any kind of like wind or other strong weather. that little tree, skinny little tree, is vulnerable to harm when it's not supported.
Mm.
It's stronger with support, and so are we.
That's amazing. That is amazing. I want to now go to future trends. Is there anything maybe evolving or considering the evolving landscape,
Mm.
are there any emerging trends or considerations that you see for mental health of women business owners?
Well, I think you alluded to this at the beginning about COVID and isolation. That it was very hard when people had only at home in the screen. And what I think is really promising now is how we have more opportunities for in-person connection and to be together in 3 dimensions with other human beings. That seems to be one of the things, slowly over time is opening up more. Well, it's different, I guess, to some degree in Canada and the US, but also it changes with the seasons where, in the winter it's less possible because people are more frequently sick, and in the spring and summer it's better. That's
Mhm.
one of the things. But the other really promising thing, conversely, through COVID that happened is a lot of barriers came down, so that it used to be that you had to go to many things in person, and particularly therapy in person. And
Yeah.
so the accessibility now, where as an entrepreneur, you used to have to take 3 hours out for a 1 hour appointment because you had to drive, you had to find a place to park, you had to get in, you had to wait, you had to have your session, you got out, you paid, you got in your car and you drove home again. And like, I don't know about you, but taking 3 hours out of my business day, out of my work day is a lot. And so I think that online capacity has really opened the door for folks. And one of the things that has come into the fore are some of the accessible mental health support through larger companies where folks can get easy access and low cost. But the problem is that the relationship is what really matters. And there's been a real proliferation of these kinds of mental health technologies in the world. And it looks promising, but my experience is that these work for only limited, because we are all so different.
Mhm.
These technologies only work for some people.
Mhm.
And what happens is many people access them and then it doesn't help them. And then people blame themselves. They fail to see that it's not them, it's that they and the tool weren't a good fit. And what I think is now swinging back is a more relational model where people are now seeing the benefit of the old fashioned way of doing it and
Mhm.
working one-to-one on an ongoing basis with the same person at depth. Like you can do it by text, you can do it by email, you can do it by voice chat. And those are good for what they're good for. But they've proliferated now because people are like, woo, accessibility and affordability. But again, they're limited.
Mhm.
And so I think in the long term, the trend will be to swing back toward in-person interactions for
Mhm.
support, and especially mental health support.
Got it. Got it. I have to say this has been very eye-opening. I'm so happy that we got to meet today. Thank you so much for coming on to Franchise Vibes. Because as I say, it's franchise vibes and everything in between. And this is what I mean by that, because there's
Mm.
so much that's going on within business, and I want to try to bring all of that to the forefront. So this has been incredibly enlightening. Um, but before we do say goodbye, do you have any final thoughts of words of encouragement that you'd like to share with aspiring women entrepreneurs?
Mm-hmm. I would say there's nothing wrong with you. There's just nothing wrong with you. The work we're doing is work that's big, heavy, important, hard work. And that means it's going to be hard sometimes. And just because you're finding it hard, there's just nothing wrong with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, with that, I mean, I think that I couldn't ask for a better ending. Thank you so much, Shulamit, again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Again, this is Franchise Vibes. I am Tamika Franklin. Today, we had an awesome guest, the entrepreneur's therapist, Shulamit, and all of the information will be provided to you. And see you in the next video.